Well met, Wanderer. Last time you were here, I shared a story from my gaming hobby. Now it's time to take a moment and indulge in another of my passions. Food, or rather, culinary. Why? Because I love it, and it's been a huge part of my life, but also to help clean up this misconception or stigma of its difficulty. I have lost count of how many times I've heard, "I can't do that. I'm not a chef like you." Even now, I look back wondering to myself how this conclusion is made. Sure, like any career, there are tricks that make it seem magical, but it's really not. I think the animated movie with the rats said it best. Anyone can cook. It is being able to create that makes a chef, though. I'm hoping by sharing some of my lessons and advice that I can inspire some of you to take the next step into becoming a chef, even if you don't get some piece of paper to make it official. Me? I waddled into the cooking world just after learning to walk, scaling countertops to lick bowls and assist. Or rather, at that age, getting away as much as possible. It was more of a bumbling about, experimenting until my first real job in a kitchen at 19 or 20. That experimenting paid off in that I was willing to try things others were more hesitant to. Coworkers and friends encouraged me to go to cooking school, so I did. Even got one of those funny-looking hats that I rarely wear. Spent about a decade and a half doing various food-related jobs, from cutting meat to feeding the armed forces. I wouldn't call myself a master, as the cooking world is constantly changing, a never-ending cycle of learning. Alright, that's enough boring you with my background. You got it. I have experience, so get on with my point, yeah? So, let's get to it. I have only 3 rules when cooking, and you will see how they come into play when I talk about today's recipe. Let's go over those rules now then, shall we? The first, and probably most important, don't be afraid of mistakes. I won't lie, for some these may be numerous. The quote, most often attributed to Edison, comes to mind. "I have not failed, I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Whether or not he really failed that many times, or even said it at all, matters little. The point is, sometimes failing is necessary when creating something. Honestly, I have tried some ideas that didn't work at all, and were so bad throwing it away was the only option after tasting it. Those mistakes I can count on one hand. More often than not, though, it has resulted in something tasty or inspired some other dish. So go for it. The next rule is something that many of my friends and classmates struggled with. Thanks to my early efforts, though, it wasn't so hard for me. Recipes are not rules. They are flexible guidelines, except when it comes to baking and pastry. Those are a little trickier. When I was at school, my savory instructors would give us a partial recipe, with most of the ingredients portions listed with a TT, which stood for to taste. Our task as chefs in training was to make it how we thought it should taste. It would then be critiqued by our instructors to let us know how close or far off the dish was from what it should be. This served a dual purpose. First, to develop our taste palate, and second, learning to cook with that newly developing sense of taste. And that ties into the final rule. Flavor is more important than appearance. Too often I have encountered meals that look absolutely beautiful, but only have a mediocre flavor at best. Also, when you cook by taste, you can augment the same dish in extraordinary ways with a minor change. Now, as promised, here is today's recipe. I called it smothered kenku for a time to tease some of my players. Other times I just call it smothered chicken. Sorry to disappoint, I won't be showing pictures or video for 2 major reasons. First, I don't want anyone to feel it has to be done this way specifically. Remember, this is a guideline, not the only way. And secondly, remember that it's all about flavor, not its appearance. All too often I've had friends get upset because theirs didn't turn out like on TV or as pictured in the books. For those not confident experimenting immediately, start with this basic recipe, and try changing things later. Now on to the recipe. These are the ingredients that would be necessary to make this dish. To make the topping, 8 ounces or 226 grams of shredded or sliced cheese. I personally have used provolone, Monterey Jack, mozzarella, Colby Jack, but just about any can be used if desired. 16 ounces or 340 grams of chopped raw bacon. Now personally I prefer to use roughly chopped so the pieces are larger and you don't get the little bits that are more likely to overcook. But you can really use any size desired. 8 ounces or 226 grams of sliced mushroom. Now, these can be any kind of mushroom. You could even use portobellos, but I prefer a more neutral mushroom. Most times I try to use fresh, but you can cheat and use a jar or a can also. 2 sliced or chopped medium onions. I usually use white or yellow onions, but if feeling adventurous, you could try green onions or even perhaps fried onions like goes on a green bean casserole. For the honey mustard sauce, you're going to need half a cup or 125 milliliters of mayonnaise. Brand really doesn't matter as long as you like it, or if you know how, make your own. Quarter cup or 60 milliliters of mustard. I primarily use yellow or Dijon when making this, but spicy and ground work just as well. Quarter cup or 60 milliliters of honey. Any type can be used, just beware of flavor conflicts, which is probably why I favor clover or wildflower honey as a more neutral flavor when making this. The base is pretty easy. It's just 6 to 8 medium chicken breasts, which you're going to season to taste while cooking with garlic salt, sage, and black pepper, all of which are optional, or you can substitute them with other spices if you prefer. Our final item, 1 cup or 250 milliliters of oil, will be used to cook chicken and later your toppings in the pan. All of it may or may not be required, so I suggest adding it a quarter cup or 60 milliliters at a time. For this task, I suggest canola or vegetable oil. Some may ask, why not olive oil? It's supposed to be healthier, right? The reason is due to the fact that it's not really meant for high temp cooking. It begins to break down, losing its quality and flavor at lower temps than other oils. But that's another topic altogether, and better just to save your artisan and flavored oils for better uses. Now that you know what goes in it, let's talk some preparation, shall we? 1. Heat up your pan on medium or medium-low and set the oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 149 degrees Celsius. And make sure to add a little bit of oil to the pan. When the pan is hot, add your chicken and season it lightly with some garlic salt, sage, and black pepper. Turn the chicken when it starts to get a nice light brown or desired coloration and season it again. After both sides of each chicken are finished, take it out of the pan and lay them out on a cookie sheet. 3. Afterwards, place the cookie sheet into the oven to cook for 45 minutes to an hour. I prefer to finish cooking them in the oven for 2 reasons. It ensures they are fully cooked, and cooking with a lower temp for longer usually results in more tender meat. 4. While the chicken is in the oven, using the pan from the chicken, add your raw bacon, mushrooms, and onions, making sure to season lightly with your garlic salt, sage, and black pepper, cooking until done over medium-low heat. This will not only provide extra flavor, but you may not even need to add extra seasoning as there may be excess left over from when you cook chicken. 5. While the 3 toppings are cooking, take a few minutes to put together the honey mustard sauce by mixing together the mayonnaise, mustard, and honey. For better results, use a whisk or fork when mixing. You can also adjust the flavor of this by adding a bit more honey for sweetness, or if you desire more bite, add mustard. If a little more creaminess is desired, add a bit of mayonnaise, though be careful not to add too much of any of these. 6. Take out the chicken and let it rest for about 5 minutes. I find 5 minutes is enough time to finish any last minute tasks or get my side dishes started. 7. Add some honey mustard to the chicken. Just enough to cover its surface, and a thin layer is usually good. Any extra can be applied later when you're eating as a sort of dipping sauce. 8. Then add some toppings cooked up in the pan. I usually try to spread the contents as evenly across the chicken breast as possible to give myself a hearty layer. 9. Finally cover it all with cheese before returning the cookie sheet to the oven just long enough for the cheese to melt. A quick note, if I'm using slices, I place them closer to the center away from the edge because when it melts, it will flow to the edge and cover everything. 10. Enjoy! This is the best part in my opinion. With that, the path should now be a little more open. Try changing toppings or battering and frying the chicken. Don't be scared of trying new things. Also, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe, or let me know in the comments below along with any requests. I hope to be returning to you all again very soon. Till then, make sure to mind your P's and Q's.